Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 16th of June, 2016, just after 1 o'clock, and welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. And we will be joined by Patrick Henningsen on live Skype link from a secure location in the southeast of England. First of all, though, the weather, we're delighted to say that Plymouth and Pembroke have got bright sunshine at the moment. Most of the reports from across the rest of the country are grey, cloudy and not too good. So that's a bit of a shame. Well, let's start off the news with some good news, and that is that as we were putting our content together this morning, in came BBC breaking to say that singer Sir Cliff Richard will face no further action over allegations of historical sexual abuse, according to prosecutors. So that must be good news. And of course, we can see that all of the investigations into paedophilia in the UK is proceeding well, Mike.
That certainly seems to be.
Yeah, well, we'll leave that there and move on overseas. Of course, France is in a pretty interesting condition at the moment, not too much appearing in UK media.
No, so this is France 24, the French president threatening to ban demonstrations because of the ongoing violence in Paris. And so this is yesterday, he was threatening that ban at a time when France is hosting the Euro football tournament, when it's faced with terrorism. Demonstrations can no longer be authorised if property and people and the public property cannot be safeguarded. And that was according to Hollande spokesperson Stéphane Le Foll. So, you know, this follows on from something we've been talking about for several months, Brian and Patrick, because they keep continuing to extend the limitations imposed by what they've effectively suspended their constitution under emergency powers as a result of so-called terrorist attacks. And this seems to be even a ramping up of that situation.
A ramping up, but of course we're not getting it described in those terms in other news sources. So if you analyse it, France is in an extremely serious condition with a few people controlling the whole country. Patrick, what's your take on France at the moment?
Well, the World Cup has a geopolitical dimension to it. I think if you look at it closely, it's very difficult to argue that it doesn't. This has to do very much with the World Cup in 2018, which is, I believe, that is supposed to be hosted by Russia. So the stakes are high. If you remember when that bid went in Switzerland, the UK sent David Cameron, Prince William, and David Beckham to try to secure the World Cup at that year for England. I think that was in 2010. And they came home empty-handed. And ever since then, there's been kind of a vendetta to take this competition back off Russia. As we know, the prestige of hosting the World Cup, what it can do for images and eyes of the world is very good, on par with the Olympics, even more so. So David Cameron's made no secret. He would like to snatch that from Russia and award it to someone else, which of course would be England. And the Department of Justice has also intervened in the FIFA corruption scandal and tried to draw Russia into that as well, in order to discredit the bid which they won in 2010 to host the 2018 Cup. So this is a bit, in geopolitical terms, they're setting up an Arsenal offside trap for Russia by basically moving the goalposts. There's two cliches in one analysis there, but this is what's going on. So by demonizing Russia, further marginalizing it in the international community, in the sports world, they hope to, either derail the 2018 World Cup for some reason, any way they can, or to damage Russia's reputation internationally. It's all part of the containment and isolation of Russia policy enacted by NATO post-February 2014 Maidan in Kiev.
Right, so Patrick, that's right. And here we've got the continuing, exactly what you're talking about. Obviously, we've had more arrests of so-called Russian supporters at Euro 2016. What was interesting was that the latest trouble in Lille, there were British and Welsh supporters there. And what you said to me yesterday after the after the Russian football team was given this suspended. How did they term it? They're going to be sent home if there's any further trouble. So
a red card.
They effectively got, well, it's a yellow card they've got so far.
Yellow card. Yeah.
So what you said was, well, what will happen next is that the people will start taunting the Russian supporters, and that looks like what has happened. There've been further arrests, and then the Russian government has called the French ambassador in to discuss this. Sergei Lavrov said that what's been going on in France to Russian supporters has been absolutely unacceptable. And his ministry said the Russian Foreign Ministry summoned the French ambassador Jean-Maurice Ripert, and they warned that further stoking of anti-Russian sentiments could significantly aggravate the atmosphere in Russian-French relations. So, Patrick, the Russians not taking this lying down?
Yeah, this is a microcosm of geopolitics. So if effectively the governing body has drawn a red line, this should remind us of another red line which was drawn back in 2013 with chemical weapons in Syria. Once an international body draws a red line, then in the case of Syria, the Western-backed terrorist factions and moderate rebels and FSA released a chemical weapons attack and then blamed it on the Syrian government and tried to rally the international community to take action after that. It failed miserably. The same thing here. Sports mirrors society. It mirrors life. It mirrors geopolitics. And they've drawn a red line. And now English supporters can bait Russian supporters and get this country disqualified and probably bring a review, some sort of an inquiry or some sort of an inquest or review that will then be used to basically attempt to yank the 2018 World Cup under the feet of Russia. And I'm sure this is still on the cards. The Department of Justice and the UK government have made very loud noises about their intention or their desire to sort of put Russia under the hammer regarding 2018.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Let's. Let's move on to. Let's move on to the EU referendum, Brian. And I just got a couple of things I want to show here, and then I'm going to ask you both for comment. This is Nigel Farage tweeting this out today. 7 days to go till polling day. Make sure you vote to leave. But the rhetoric is if you want your country back. So that's the first point. The second point, I've removed who tweeted these out to protect the innocent. 1 week till the UK is free and independent once again. One final push and we will win this vote. And then this one also saying Mark Carney must be fired after the EU referendum. He is nothing more than David Cameron's puppet. And before we come on to what Mark Carney had been saying, I just wanted to ask both your opinions about the way that many of the people that are engaged in the EU referendum debate view the world. They view that Mark Carney is David Cameron's puppet as opposed to David Cameron being Mark Carney's puppet. And they believe in the notion that we get the country back in some way. What back from whom? And so it seems to me that to understand the broader picture, we need to perhaps encourage people to look at this whole situation from a slightly different angle.
Would agree with that, Mike, and perhaps we could use the comments from David Ellis yesterday when he was talking about the creation of the EU military. Of course, what he brought in was that we needed to pay attention not only to the creation of that military, but the creation of an EU treasury. So he was absolutely focusing on look at the money and look at the control of the money. And of course, this is where it gets interesting, because if we look at the control of the money, I think we can say that it is actually the City of London that is controlling the European politics. I don't know what Patrick would say in response to that.
Yes. So Patrick, I mean, if we don't know who the enemy is, if we're saying we need to get our country back, but in fact the enemy is within this country, then we're not going to get anywhere, are we?
Yeah, and that tweet, you should be able to read through that tweet to know that absolutely whoever's appointed to be in charge of something is a key is the Bank of England, who controls the creation and the issuance of currency in this country, is not going to be a puppet of a prime minister. In fact, if it's a puppet of anyone, it's the puppet of the international banking syndicate. And they will choose what they would often call a safe pair of hands, someone who is not going to divert from the agenda. And currently, the agenda in the UK is just gradual deregulation, negative interest rates, quantitative easing, deflation of the real value of the currency, and also over leveraging in the city, and basically money for old rope. That's the agenda, and as long as Mark Carney keeps that system in place, he will be staying in his job, and I don't think the Prime Minister has much to say about it.
That's absolutely right. Now, of course, Mark Carney has been making threats for months, along with a lot of other international bankers, in response to the criticism to the threats that he's been making, he had this to say: all of the public comments that I or the other bank officials have made regarding issues related to the referendum have been limited to factors that affect the bank's statutory responsibilities and have been entirely consistent with their remits. But what he ignores is the simple fact that the governor of the Bank of England is supposed to remain politically neutral at all times. This is the first time that any governor of the Bank of England has ever got involved in a political debate in this way. It is unprecedented, so personally, if rather than saying let's wait until after the EU referendum to get rid of him, I would be getting rid of him right now. But anyway,
well, apart from anything else, he's a Canadian.
Absolutely.
So let's come down to the hard fact. Why should he be interested in anything for the benefit of Britain? It's that simple.
It is that simple, yes. Now, in the meantime, Deutsche Bank, their shares at a record low. This is sort of information dripping out into the financial press that the European banks are again a cause for concern. Now, Deutsche Bank recently experienced one of these little IT glitches that meant that people couldn't get access to their money, and money couldn't be transferred from one place to another. So that's always a sign that the banks are in, that a particular bank is in deep trouble. But their share price at a record low, as it said, closed at $16.88. Shares trading in Frankfurt were down more than 4% earlier this week. While this article gets into some of the technical detail as to why it might be that Deutsche Bank isn't doing so well, the bottom line is that they and the entire global financial system continue to be bankrupt, and we're not doing anything to sort that problem out.
We're not, Mike. Isn't it fascinating that Deutsche Bank, of course, one of the big banks supporting political charity Common Purpose, Chief Executive Julia Middleton boasting in her book about the power of these banks. The other one she recommended was Lehman Brothers, role model to youngsters at school. Lehman, I think they went bust, didn't they?
I think they did.
And Deutsche Bank at the moment looks like it's going to go
the same way.
So if you want to follow the decline of Britain, follow political charity Common Purpose, and certainly follow the advice of Julia Middleton, the chief executive. Well, when the banks are in trouble, the next thing that comes along is we need a war. And this is Mike's comment from a couple of days ago, Donald Tusk, saying with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek here, don't worry, Jens, the plan for the EU army is going well. We'll be at war with Russia at the end of next year. Now, we're making a joke of something that's very, very serious because, of course, at the moment we can see the West, led by David Cameron and Mr. Obama in particular, antagonizing Russia. Situation in Eastern Europe is being made more dangerous by the day as a result of actions by Britain and the US. But Patrick, you've also been seeing things develop in Syria. And you've had this article up, German boots on the ground as NATO troop buildup continues on the Syria-Turkey border. So an article by Vanessa Beeley, and he also had this excellent map. Tell us what's happening here.
Well, there's a lot of military movements into Syria and into Turkey, and specifically, some reports of international troops amassing along the Syrian-Turkish border. Now, this is most of this the media will turn a blind eye to, aside from the odd story that you might see in the Mirror or a paper like this that normally will have a splash story about British SAS troops fighting in Syria, and we talked about this last week, and they're fighting alongside the so-called moderate rebels, which are really al-Nusra Front, so that's al-Qaeda in Syria, so British SAS fighting alongside al-Qaeda in Syria. Should be the headline, but unfortunately it's not. So EU Army, this story about Germany feeds very nicely into the EU Army narrative, and so through the NATO, under the flag of NATO, the Western militaries will be deploying very special forces to do certain things. If you remember the Yugoslavian War, some German special forces were present in that war, and they were doing kind of quite dirty mopping up business in some of the bad fighting areas. So, but this isn't often reported because this is kind of a forbidden subject in the media. Germany's got troops anywhere doing anything. This is always going to get seized upon by certain tabloids as being a bad thing. But again, the thing that will glue the EU Army together will be overseas commitments. Once those are established, once everyone's invested in overseas conflicts, and then if an EU army is then formed, this is the glue that will hold it together and also hold Europe together. Because, hey, we can't break up now. This is a international security, a super European security issue.
Well, let's bring this image on screen, which reinforces all of this. It was from a few days ago, but the Express secret plot exposed EU in stealth plan to set up army by merging the German and the Dutch forces. And of course, Mike Robinson has been pointing out much of the published material on that merging. And here we've got Syria now, bring in the Germans. Well, actually, it won't just be the Germans, because you're absolutely right, Patrick. Who's going to come in? This is going to be joint EU operations. So you give them a live testing area for the formation of the EU military. And one of the things I'll just add to that is that we keep hearing that the Leave campaign is remarkably shy about talking about the formation of the EU military. So whereas you would expect them to be grasping this as something to really sell to the British public, we need to get away from this European Union dictatorship. The moment the formation of the EU military is mentioned, Leave is allegedly going a bit squeamish. So a little bit of research to be done into that. But if the military is the iron fist, then of course what's going on behind all of that is stealth politics. And let's have a look at this BBC article and follow it through to see how this subversion by stealth works. So, British-Iranian woman accused of Iran regime plot. Now, whether this lady is guilty or not is not known at the moment, but what we want to illustrate is what's going on around her. But she's sold by the BBC as being, of course, a loving mum. She's a housewife, and those nasty Iranians have got her in prison. This is part of the report that she's been picked up essentially by the secret police in Iran. And they're saying through membership in foreign companies and institutions, she's participated in designing and executing media and cyber plots with the aim of a peaceful overthrow of the Islamic Republic. Now, some very interesting things in there, media, cyber plots and overthrow. I'll just give you a couple more bits down here. Foreign Office has got very upset about this, and they've unleashed the Middle East Minister Tobias Ellwood, Conservative MP for the Bournemouth area, and he's doing his best to get this lady free. What's interesting about this man is, of course, he's connected with Ruzi, and we'll come on to them again in a minute. So I've put in blue, that's one of his articles he's boasting has been accepted by Ruzi. And the Jewish Chronicle a little while ago was really fluffing him up as a upstanding MP promoted by David Cameron, toured the Middle East, and of course he's a big member of Conservative Friends of Israel. This same Jewish Chronicle article, of course, also promotes Brooks Newmark, and remember he was the MP who was eventually disgraced for posting images of himself largely unclothed, so if you're a weak disposition, look away. And of course, it was Brooks Newmark who was the man who worked very, very hard in the background to support General Idris on the Turkish border in order to help destabilize Assad. So we'll keep going with this, and then I'm going to ask Patrick for a bit of comment. Well, the lady who is in prison in Iran was working for this organization, Thomson Reuters Foundation. They've denied that they have any connections with Iran. This is the lady making the statement, Monique Villa. She says, we haven't done anything in Iran. We're not doing anything with Iran. This particular journalist has not been connected with Iran except from the fact that she's family connections. But when we look at the Thomson Reuters Foundation, we've got trust law connects the best law firms in the world with NGOs and social enterprises working to create social and environmental change. So we've got millions of dollars going through Thomson media outfit. And what are they working to do? Create social change through law firms. Well, follow it through. We say it's BBC subversion. They should know. So this was an article where we pointed out the BBC was encouraging women to break the law in Iran by not wearing the hijab hairdress. And we've also pointed out BBC media action using government money, US government money, in order to overthrow regimes. And this was Juliet Harkin, a former BBC media action project manager, boasting that they were using moderates inside the Syrian government in order to help start change within the country. In my book, Patrick, that is subversion, isn't it? Working inside a nation state to help destabilize the government.
Yes, and then when that person, if that is indeed what the case is, which according to what you've shown there, it looks like that's what it is. But and then what you have is the international outrage and indignation industry kicks into high gear and says, oh, it's a member of the press, and they're there doing work for an NGO, as if they're protected under the umbrella of the term NGO. But what you have, Brian, is that a lot of these so-called NGOs, they're flying the flag of the non-governmental organization. But in fact, what they are GOs. They're government organizations. If you're getting BBC funding, you are a government-funded organization or person. If you're getting working or funded by the National Endowment for Democracy in the U.S. or the National Democratic Institute that gets funding from the State Department or USAID, those are all government organizations. They're funded by the government, therefore they are government organizations. They're only NGOs in name. And it's a very cynical deployment of this term, which is used so often. Very few people question it, much less the intelligentsia of the wonderful mainstream media will hardly ever question it, and especially The Guardian, and who should be a liberal publication apparently, will never question this. And so this is an area of investigation that should be a goldmine for journalists. Yet the journalists, most of them, they shy away, if not run away in the opposite direction of this topic, which I think is very important. This is subversion. This is how the colonization process works, by creating a shadow state or shadow organizations to destabilize a country from within. It's smart power, it's soft power, it's all these things. It's dark power, in fact, because it's done in stealth.
It's absolutely done in stealth. And of course, BBC, £3.65 billion of public money to run this sort of operation. But we've also got BBC Global. But let's come back to what the Iranians had to say. This has also been reported here in the New York Times. And Iran has accused the Thomson Reuters charity of sedition. So the Iranians not messing around here. And whatever we might think about the Iranian regime, these people are not silly. They've got a reason for focusing on this particular organization. This is what they said in the New York Times article. Through membership in foreign companies and institutions, she has participated in designing and executing media and cyber plots. Now, these plots are exactly what we are seeing. We've researched media action, and it's quite clear to us that this is exactly what is going on, with particularly the help of big media outfits such as the BBC. Could it be that Reuters is also involved in this sort of soft power projection? But Iran is not the only one, as we'll see in a moment. But just have a look at the Reuters organization itself. It says it's there to inform, connect, and empower. Isn't it there just to tell people what the truth is of what's going on around the world? But no, it's bigger than that, because here we are, a global network. We speak 35 languages. We're working right the way across the world. Here's all the glowing website. Here's the law. Trust Reuters to get law that we need across the world. And it didn't take us long to see a few interesting faces, because we can certainly trust them, Mike, because Sherry Blair is involved.
I'm not certain she looks like that anymore.
I think there's been a taj, I think is the English expression, of airbrushing.
Bit of a tweak there.
A little bit of a tweet. So let's make the point, because Russia and Egypt were also pointing fingers at these Western NGOs, or GOs as Patrick Henningsen would rather call them. And we've got some articles here where Putin is highlighting that he doesn't want these organizations in his country. And he was pretty outspoken. He's banning them. Why are the Russians banning them? Why were the Egyptians trying to get rid of these organizations? Because, as BBC Media Action says, they are involved in sedition and subversion. And if you're not convinced, then remember this report we did for a few days ago. Here's the big boss, Dr. Karen von Hippel from RUSI, Royal United Services Institute, the very organisation advising the British government on defence at the moment. And what we pointed out is that back in the 90s, 1993, 95, this lady was working on the decentralised political structures for a future Somali state. So at some stage back in the 90s, with European money, 233,000, what have we got, ecus there, money's being paid to plan out how they're going to bring down the Somali state.
But surely that's all historical.
I thought that was happening at the moment as it's ripped apart by war, Mike. Or was that my imagination?
Must be.
Patrick, I'll just give you 20 seconds if you want to summarise anything there, but it seems to us the iron fist in a velvet glove is exactly how this soft politics and power is being unleashed on unsuspecting countries.
Sure. If you look at Syria as a great case study, the amount of subversion that's gone on through various NGOs, through all these other open society funded citizen journalist programs and so forth. I mean, even Reuters is employing photographers or AP, they're getting their photos from people who are part of the moderate rebel faction. So again, portraying a certain public narrative. But what it is, it's softening up these countries, whether it's Syria, Iran, Somalia, or any of these countries we mentioned, softening them up for the hammer. And the hammer is military force. Eventually will come in to clean up the mess. So, and then when that happens, there's already a shadow state in place. There's civil quasi-NGO organizations that will be taking over the management of day-to-day life in those countries and replacing existing governance structures seamlessly. That's the plan on paper. And so I think we pointed out quite a few aspects of this here.
It's in front of our eyes, isn't it? What's going on, caused by the West.
Okay, good news. The first episode of the new series of Insight is up on the UK Column community website. This is some content for members only at this point in time. So if you are a UK Column member, please log into the UK Column community website and watch and leave your comments underneath. Alex Thompson, who was taking part in the first episode of this, will be responding to any questions that you have.
Okay, and the basic flavour of this one, Mike?
This one is called Eurasia on the Brink. Patrick Henningsen took part, Eric Zeus took part, and Alex Thompson took part. And we're trying to get into much deeper detail on some of the subjects that we cover on the news occasionally, but we don't really get to.
We don't have the time here
to do to get into the depth. So that's what we're aiming to do, and we're going to follow that up early next week with an interview that David Scott did with Gilad Atzmon, and a very interesting twist. If you've seen Gilad Atzmon interviews in the past, you'll find this one has a slightly different flavour to it. It's extremely interesting. I'm looking forward to putting that one up.
Excellent. Well, the good news continues because we're delighted to say that we've finalised the Dispatches series, which is 10 episodes of David Scott from Northern Exposure interviewing Brian and Janice Doherty. This is the couple that had their children taken away from them after they reported that a man had offered them money, £25,000, to have and abuse their young son. So hounded out of Scotland, they ran to Ireland, subsequently the children taken away, and still not back with mum and dad. So as we reflect on what Justice Goddard is apparently doing to root out those paedophiles in UK, remarkable that when that couple report a paedophile in Scotland, then they are the ones who are viciously hounded and abused. The first series will go out after the news.
First episode of this is going out on the live stream, if you're watching on the UK Column website, at least immediately after this news programme finishes, yes.
And then there will be a further 9. We have no doubt that once you start to hear the parents describing themselves what actually took place, you will want to stick with all 10 episodes of this, because I'm almost lost for words when you hear it. But if you're a parent, you need to listen to this series of interviews. Okay.
Well, today, the London Conference on Globalisation and World Order is taking place at Chatham House. And so far, we've had Philip Hammond. I haven't seen very much of this because it began this morning and I didn't have a chance to watch too much of it, so I'll get more details later on. But this was Philip Hammond speaking, and well, he was saying that UK is respected worldwide, but we would be less valuable and less important to our allies outside the European Union. That was one of the non-things that he said. And he also said that the world asylum system is creaking under the weight of a surge in conflict. And I just thought to myself, it never ceases to stagger me how willing our MPs are to be so horrendously hypocritical.
Well, they're disgusting people, Mike, to really sort the country out. Just my opinion, but I think we need all of the existing MPs taken out of Parliament, and we also need to get rid of the party system. We need individuals of morality and common sense back in Westminster.
Yes.
So hopefully the Brexit vote is going to put the marker down that something has to happen if this country is going to be brought back to an even keel. A sanity, yeah.
Well, yesterday we were talking about how great it was that there was so much leadership going on and how the world is really reacting well to all this leadership that we're seeing. And we talked about the Foreign and Commonwealth Office Future International Leaders Programme. And we talked about the Digital Leaders Programme, which Matt Hancock was speaking at yesterday. Well, we now have at least one winner from last night's awards ceremony. I haven't seen any of the others yet. If there's anybody interesting, I'll bring it up. But Wigan Council has been crowned Digital Council of the Year at the awards in London, so it goes on. I don't really want to say much more about what this is about, but they've got a whole bunch of digital services that they're rolling out. But as we pointed out yesterday, along with the digital services comes the transformation of the organization into something which isn't necessarily very good. But here's why we're really covering this, because the United Nations is now pushing for the 2016 class of young leaders. Here is their website. It's a delightful website, as you can see. The United Nations has announced the inaugural class of the Young Leaders for Sustainable Development Goals, 17 young change makers whose leadership is catalyzing the achievement of the goals. They're choosing those at the moment. So if you wanted to submit your application for that, you can do so.
If you're young.
If you're young,
yeah.
Yes, you've got to be young. From food to fashion to finance, the young leaders will come from many different backgrounds, represent every region in the world, and help activate millions of young people in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. So there you go. That's the next big leadership training exercise, which is going to create some new people to improve the planet that we live on.
And all this slips in under sort of national government. So suddenly you've got all of the NGOs, the charities being run by trained future leaders who are really in control. It's very sinister stuff when you see it for what it is.
Absolutely. Now, we call it a death cult.
Because that's what it is.
Yes. So this is the governance that we're living under, we believe. And we've seen a lot of this type of thing over the last couple of years at the Tower of London on Remembrance Day and so on. But this is the latest one, the latest poppies wave. And this is being created by Paul Cummins, an artist, a ceramic artist. Each one of these red poppies here is made out of ceramics. Not sure who's funding that. But as you can see, it's really designed to look like a river of blood coming off the wall of Lincoln Castle. Well, this is from his website because he has a history of this, of creating rivers of blood everywhere. It is celebrating death, isn't it?
Well, it's absolutely celebrating death, Mike. And if people have not seen the YouTube clip about the so-called celebrations with regard to Verdun, they need to see this. This was in France, a gathering supposedly to remember the battle at Verdun. But what did we have? We had people dancing on the graves of the dead soldiers. This is a death cult, and it's becoming ever more obvious that it's coming straight out of central government.
Well, I just wanted to put his picture up. This is the artist that's behind this. Not really going to make any more comment than that. Maybe people might like to contact him and ask him what.
If
yeah, go ahead, Patrick. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. You know, it's worth asking here. I'm just posing an innocent question. 864,000 ceramic poppies. Now, I'm going to venture to guess that these weren't manufactured or made here in the UK. If they were, I stand corrected, but is it possible that these might have been made in a developing world country at slave labor rates? This is a question I'm just throwing out there. I could be wrong, in fact, but that would be an interesting question to answer.
So maybe some of us could contact the artist and ask that question.
In a polite, reasonable way, of course, because that's the best way to get information out of the system.
Well, we have a particularly polite and reasonable tweet coming. This is superb.
Well, we wanted to end on a high, and the high is that clearly people are certainly beginning to wake up to what our politicians are really about. We thought this was an outstanding tweet. We had to have a look and consider it. It says, decisions, which psychopath has my best interests at heart? I couldn't quite make out the two pictures, Mike. I found when I looked at them, I sort of knew somebody was there, but I couldn't quite work out who it was. I did realise the one on the left, though, of course, wasn't a woman. Boris, possibly? I don't know.
Yeah.
We just wanted to comment on this, that for this sort of material to come out, it shows us that people really are beginning to look through our political class and, of course, see that the real agenda is pretty dark and pretty unpleasant. Rivers of blood. I think the original two murderers would have been quite impressed to see the government promoting the sort of dark agenda that they were involved in at the time. On that note, we are going to say, please don't just sit and watch UK column news. We're putting out the information for people to act. It's important what you do. Make a phone call, write a letter, send an email, tweet. But what we need to do is to wake as many people up as possible to what is really taking place, and of course to get deeper into the political action so people are not deceived by the puppet show, the EUReferendumPsyOp, which is the referendum coming up. We need to get right in under that to see who is really controlling the British government. And if you, like us, believe that the City of London is part of that, it's the City of London that needs to be exposed. Thank you to people who've donated to us over the last few days. That's much appreciated. And it's only with your help we can do what we do. Patrick, thank you very much for joining us. And that's it for today. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.